Hey Life Youth, Roger here. Super excited. We're going to be wrapping up our series today on the teachings of Jesus. We've been talking about parables, which were one of the tools Jesus used to teach really often. If you still don't know at this point or remember, parables are stories told to teach a deeper meaning, usually using familiar people, places, or things to tell those stories. The first week, we talked about the parable of the talents. Last week, we talked about the parable of the great banquet. If you haven't seen either of those, go head back on our YouTube and watch those messages. Today, I'm going to begin with a question before we get into our parable. And that question is, what do you treasure? A treasure is something incredibly valuable, something that you cherish, something that you really see as valuable. So one of my treasures is my Nintendo Switch, right here. Many of you probably have one of these. It's valuable to me for a couple of reasons. First, it was really hard to find. I got mine at the beginning of the pandemic when it was kind of difficult to find them. I got mine off of somebody selling it on Facebook Market. It's also valuable to me, not just because it's worth a lot of money, but I really enjoy video games. They're a thing I do to relax and to unwind in my free time. It's also valuable to me because the Switch in particular is a really good system to have for parties and for when you have people over. There's a lot of really fun games you can play with people to build a relationship and have a good time. Also, Nintendo has a lot of games that I played as a kid and that they have remade for the Switch. So there's a little bit of nostalgia for me. So it's valuable to me for lots of reasons. And often we can come up with really good reasons to value our treasures, the things we have. So think about your treasures. What do you treasure? What possession do you see as really valuable? Maybe it's your clothes or your game system. Maybe it's your food. Maybe for high schoolers, maybe it's your car. But what are the things that you see as your treasures? This week, we're going to be talking about the parable of the rich fool that Jesus told to teach us something about possessions and about our things. It's in Luke 12, 13 to 15. In Luke 12, verse 13, we pick up with someone in the crowd asking Jesus a question, and he responds with a teaching in a parable like he often does. So Luke 12:13 says this, "Then someone called from the crowd, 'Teacher, please tell my brother to divide our father's estate with me.' Jesus replied, 'Friend, who made me a judge over you to decide such a thing as that?' Then he said, 'Beware, guard against every kind of greed. Life is not measured by how much you own.'" And this parable is a good one because it's really simple. Jesus lays out the main point of it before he even starts. We haven't even gotten to the parable yet, and Jesus has really laid down a really important truth. This man comes to Jesus asking him to resolve a legal issue. And this might seem a bit strange, but during that time, rabbis, which is what Jesus was, a teacher of the Jewish scriptures, were often or sometimes asked to solve legal disputes because they knew the Jewish law so well. But Jesus doesn't really seem to want anything to do with this. He even says, I'm not really qualified to do this. He really wants nothing to do with this legal dispute. And if we look at this man, he doesn't really seem, the one who asked Jesus a question, he doesn't really seem that concerned with justice. He really just seems to want Jesus to make a ruling or to show that he is right, that he should be able to have a part of his father's estate over his brother. He really wants to be in the right. But Jesus not only says I'm not qualified, but tells the man not to be greedy with material possessions. In fact, when we look at the Greek here and the way it's written, it tells us that Jesus actually tells him to guard against, to be actively protecting himself from greed when it comes to material possessions. And Jesus lays out a huge truth right up front, and this is it. Our lives are not measured by our stuff. And this is contrary to everything we see in media. Right? All day we have people, commercials, TV shows, and even even outside of media, our friends telling us what we need to have. As if our lives will only be fulfilled when we have the right stuff. The right clothes, the right food, the right workout equipment, the right Switch game, the right Insta-feed. But Jesus says none of our stuff matters. In fact, he tells us to be really careful about not being greedy over our stuff, over our treasures. So what does matter? If it's not stuff, what does Jesus think makes a life worth living. And this is where he introduces the parable, where he's going to tell us that pretty plainly, even for a parable. And we go back to Luke chapter 12. Now we're in verse 16, which says this. Then, after answering this man, he told him a story. A rich man had a fertile crop that produced a rich man had a fertile farm that produced fine crops. He said to himself, "What should I do? I don't have room for all of my crops." Then he said, "I know. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. Then I'll have room enough to store all my wheat and other goods, and I'll sit back and say to myself, 'My friend, you have enough stored away for years to come. Now take it easy. Eat, drink, and be merry.' But God said to him, 'You fool, you will die this very night. Those who will get everything you worked for.' Yes, a person is a fool to store up earthly wealth, but not have a rich relationship with God." This parable is fairly easy to understand. There aren't even characters we have to try and figure out who they are. A man finds that he has had a really good harvest. He has too much food, and he has abundance of food from his farms. But instead of sharing that food with people who don't have enough food, which is something that Jesus definitely teaches us to do and definitely cares about a great deal, the man builds bigger barns to hold his stuff. And it seems not just his crops, but all of his stuff. And he tells himself once he has enough room for all of his stuff, he can relax and be happy. And I love how blunt this parable is, because the next thing that happens in Jesus' parable is that God talks right to the man. He tells the man that he's going to die, and all of his stuff will go to waste. Jesus is teaching this man, that the man who asked him the original question about wanting a part of his father's estate split between him and his brother, he's teaching this man that a bigger house and more stuff is meaningless. And Jesus finishes his story after the parable by just saying very plainly what matters. If you look back at verse 21, yes, a person is a fool to store up earthly wealth, but not have what? A rich relationship with God. A rich relationship with God. This is what gives our lives meaning and has significance even after we die. Jesus' death on a cross means that even after we die, our relationship with God will still have rich meaning, because we will enjoy eternity. We will enjoy that relationship forever with our Heavenly Father. That's what Jesus' death on a cross provides. So here's my question for you. If our stuff shouldn't matter, if our life is not measured by our stuff, and if our relationship with God is the only thing that truly matters, is the only thing that gives us rich meaning, deep meaning, lasting meaning to our lives, is your relationship with God a treasure? Remember, we said a treasure was something that we value, something we cherish, something that is special to us. And many of you will probably say you have a relationship with God, and that's good. We need to celebrate that. That's a good thing. But is your relationship with God something you see as a valuable treasure? Is it worth more to you than any of your stuff? Do you cherish it? Do you see the things that you do to build that relationship, like praying, like reading our scripture, like learning how to be a follower of Jesus, the things that build our relationship with God and bring us closer to Him? Do you see those things as valuable, as incredibly valuable? Do you see the things you do to strengthen your relationship with God as important above all else? If our relationship with God is valuable, is a treasure, is to be cherished, how could we not want to build it up by learning more about Him and by becoming a follower of Jesus? Is your relationship with God your most precious possession? So here's my challenge for you tonight. It's simple, as I often try to keep them. Evaluate your stuff. I want you to take an inventory of your valuable possessions. I want you to write down what do I treasure, what do I cherish, what is valuable to me. Maybe it is your Switch, like I said, like it was for me. But maybe there's other things, and there's going to be more than one thing if we're really honest. But write down a list of those things. Then I want you to think about how you may be treasuring those things more than God. By putting off the things that build our relationship with God, we're in favor of playing video games, in favor of hanging out with friends, in favor of shopping on Amazon, in favor of looking at the things we want to have. By doing those things instead of building our relationship with God, we are showing that those things, that stuff, is treasured by us more than our relationship with God. So think about how those things are getting in the way, even just taking up time that you could be spending building a relationship with God. Lastly, once you've done both those things, I want you to spend time in prayer thanking God for what he has done for you and the relationship Jesus has provided you with. And if you don't have that relationship, tonight is a great night to ask your small group why their relationship with God is so important to them. And not just tonight, but any night. Ask your leaders and your fellow students, why does it matter? Why do you value and treasure this relationship with God so much? Because maybe tonight is the night you pray a prayer of thanksgiving to God as you begin a relationship with him. May God bless your conversations tonight. May they be fruitful and difficult and good. See you soon.